60 seconds.
Mhm.
We should be good to go. Make sure this is working. Yep, we're straight. Whenever you're ready,
That's it.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It does look like we have a presence of quorum. Were there any online attendees or?
No online attendees.
No online.
today, sir.
Perfect. All right, a little housekeeping first. We do need to adopt the agenda for today.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose that we move the approval of the minutes from May to the next meeting.
Okay.
So we'll strike that from the agenda today.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda with the amendments just recommended by the Planning and Zoning Administrator.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented with the changes to move the approved minutes of May 26th to the next meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That looks like, point of order? You're good. All right, looks like we'll go ahead and jump into new business. We do have a pretty full house today, so I'll just go over a few things. The purpose of this planning committee is really more informal. It's a dialogue. Our directive is really just to approve any applicants move to the planning commission, which would be the next step, or provide feedback in case any is warranted for maybe a different direction. Like I said, don't be nervous. Ask questions. This is your chance. You've got a panel of supervisors here, county staff, and then planning commission members. So take advantage of the opportunity and ask any questions you may have. And then, of course, if you are approved and nominated to go to the planning commission, it'll be a more detailed and thorough discussion there. Additionally, there'll be public comment after each case for those interested, and then there'll be general public comment at the end. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into our first case. This is a short-term rental primitive campground application. Ms. Alimu has requested an exploratory meeting for an activity to define either primitive campground or multiple short-term rentals in accordance with Madison County zoning ordinance, Article 4-2-1, /3-1-22, and Article 15-A. The subject parcel is identified as Madison County Tax Map 30-5C. The parcel is 15 acres and is zoned A1. Mr. Nichols, if you want to give a little more detail.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this particular application needs a little bit of deliberation. I'll put it up on the screen here. The applicant has a piece of property in Banco that has a home, and it has a site that is an outdoor area, pergola, and that they have applied for a permit to build decks that they'll use for overnight camping accommodation. And so the question at hand is rather to permit this as short-term rentals under that provision of the ordinance, or as a primitive campground, or some combination of the two. So that's the matter that's up for discussion today. In your packet, I have included the relevant ordinances for discussion. I think that it may be pertinent to get them permitted under the short-term rental provisions and just tag a primitive campground along with it. It's very similar to Ms. Graveria's application that went through a couple months ago. But I'll leave that for the applicant to give their pitch of what they're doing, and then we can deliberate.
Perfect. And if the applicants in the audience, please use the microphone. We have the hands to the podium today. And if you'd like to go ahead and start, we'll let you. Oh, and apologies. Yes, please state your name. Do we need an address? No, just name for the record.
Absolutely. All right. Good morning. My name is Kelsey Schlein. I'm a planner with Shimp Engineering. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Ida Alamu, so I'm the owner of the property.
And so, sorry, I should have printed a few more copies here, but I'll just pass out like, one on each end. Ida is currently operates. So this is a 15-acre parcel zoned A1, just kind of southeast of the intersection of Route 231. and Route 670. IDA currently operates one short-term rental on the property, and you'll see on the this little handout that we packed here, she is proposing to construct 2 additional short-term rentals on the property. These will be tent dome structures. So they're tent dome structures that are built on top of a deck platform. Ida, if you want to go into maybe a little more detail of exactly where you guys are going to site those on the property, I think that'd be helpful for the review committee to understand.
Yeah, so we're planning to put them, I guess, more on the left side, kind of coming down the hill, like on the other side of the driveway, a little closer to the entrance of the property. So, oh, sorry about that. Okay, and I hope I'm understanding it correctly. So it's gonna be, this is the entrance, right?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so it's gonna be somewhere around here. It's gonna be the 2 domes that we're working on, that we're proposing.
Sure. And so then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and,
So it's like halfway up the hill?
yes, yeah.
One quick question too. Did I hear that the existing structure of the home will also be a short-term rental, or will that be occupied by owner tenant or?
So the existing structure is already a short-term rental.
It is, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, there are 2 structures up there, the main house, right? And then was there not, there's a garage, a separate garage or something? What's the other structure? Isn't there
So-
another structure up there?
So there is the main house. The other structure was there when we purchased it. It's kind of seems like someone started building a house and it was never completed.
Yeah.
So we're kind of leaving that as it is. We're not really doing anything with it. We don't have any plans to finish it at this current moment. We haven't really thought about exactly what we want to do with it or like what funds we want to put towards that, or don't really have the funds to finish it right now, really. So, yeah.
So Carter, I'm familiar with this
Yeah,
location.
I am too, yeah.
Because when it went for sale, there was a lot of people asking about it. We did some research on the main house, they got a permit. Yeah, on the main house, because after all the inquiries, we did some research. The main house, they got a permit and got a CO for it, certificate of occupancy. The second one, second structure, apparently there was a permit issue, but there's no records anywhere. And people do recall doing like a foundation inspection, but it's basically framed up and that's kind of it. Doesn't even have siding at this point. And then, I think I spoke with you when you purchased it, and,
Yes.
I think the only thing different from that photo is they've gone in there and put in new building wraps so they can preserve what they have, but it's just open framing in there.
Jamie, if I may, sorry, I came a little stronger there on the mic. If I may ask on that, because I'm all about public health, public safety, I'm not sure if this structure will count. I know we have the 3 acres per use and we have ordinance and all for short-term rental, that's why we're here today. How would you address that from a public safety standpoint? It is their property, I understand that, but if there's gonna be guests and all staying, how do we ensure the safety of a structure that's basically left abandoned? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's an incomplete structure. It was intended to be a dwelling, so if you're looking at that 3 acres per use, I think it would come into play, because it was apparently, well, we have no records, but apparently it was designed as a dwelling. I would say if they're gonna be using the site for the main Airbnb and then potentially these other 2 sites, just ensure that it's secured, you know, so guests and little kid guests don't want to go playing in it and end up getting hurt or something of that nature.
So just maybe like boarding the doors and some post-it
Yeah,
note?
ensure
Okay.
that the doors are basically locked and a note, keep out or something like that. It's incomplete at this point, and it's a good thing you got building wrap on it, because it's gonna deteriorate unless somebody does something with it. And even the building wrap's it's not that long it's gonna last.
And I guess one point too, when we're discussing the 3 acres, with a 15-acre parcel, you would be allowed up to 5 structures, given a special use permit, because there is a restriction minimum for acreage on a structure. So if you are thinking of maybe doing this in the future, you'd have your main home that's already rented, this one, and your 2 yards. So potentially you'd even be up for 1 more site total, as the ordinances read today, if I'm correct on that.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So let me ask you, have you talked to Jim Durham, the guy that owns the old mill that at the bottom of the hill?
Regarding the special use permit?
Yeah.
No, we haven't.
Regarding what your plans are?
No.
Okay, because you realize you've got an easement through his property to even get to your property, right? That's a fact, I know that.
Yes. We weren't sure if the driveway was actually part of his property.
It is.
But we do know that we passed by the property.
Right, so everybody see 30-5B, right there, that's Jim Durham's property, and that structure down in the corner of that lot, that's the old mill. So there was easement. Now, when the former owners built the house and all that stuff, VDOT, I don't think VDOT had a problem with it. Some of the adjacent landowners had a problem saying that the line of sight was not good and there was a hill, and there was no hill in the line of sight, in my opinion, is fine. So I guess one of my questions would be, I don't know how easements or right-of-ways are drawn up, but what's the likelihood that this easement or right-of-way to get through the mill, see right there's the driveway right there, that's Durham's property, was written such that it was to be used for residential and not a commercial activity? I don't know the answer to that question, but I don't even.
I'll pull the deed on that one, and we'll take a look, see what plats are on file before we get to planning commission phase, so we can unpack that one. The property does have frontage,
Yeah,
does have
up-
road frontage,
up the road
a little bit further up. And I do believe there is a gate there, and I think that the gate is on
No.
the applicant's property, is
I
it not?
don't think so, Al. I think that's Charlie Strickler's property.
So if I can ask
Can you
your,
get up there? It's right before the bridge. Yeah, it's like right where that sign, pretty
Yes.
much where the sign is, I think.
yeah, somewhere up here.
Yeah. Now, across the bridge is the gate,
Okay,
and that's Charlie Strickler's property. So anyhow.
so somewhere in here is the frontage then, what
Right,
you're
that's
saying?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think I walked it off one time, because you need 600 feet between entrances on 231,
I'll have to look that one up.
and that was an issue. You were on the planning, we were on the planning commission then, right, Steve? Remember that?
Yeah,
So anyhow,
Is that a zoning-specific requirement for
What's
the,
that?
is the 600-foot spacing a zoning-specific requirement that you guys have in your zoning ordinance?
yeah.
Okay, I see.
and see, that's for primary roads, right?
Right,
Yeah,
which
so
is-
I think we
Right.
consider 231 primary, yeah.
That's right. But, I mean, there was no problem with the easement before with Mr. Durham. But, of course, that was a residential, it was gonna be a residential issue, and now it's a commercial issue, so I would go talk to him. He's a nice guy, so. Okay.
We have communicated briefly about like packages and things like that,
Yeah.
so we have contact, so
Okay.
I will
Okay, good.
A quick question. It looks like you're trying to decide which way to go here, as far as either primitive campground or short-term rentals. Can you describe the two buildings that you're planning on doing, or the two units?
Yes, the 2 units we're trying to do, they're gonna be just kind of tent dome-like structures on decks. And we are planning on having electricity and bathroom, plumbing, and unit. So they're kind of gonna be like small, self-sufficient structures.
Okay, so we are talking about electricity, water, plumbing. Okay. I think that puts you pretty squarely into the short-term rental units, even though they are, quote, non-traditional structures. That's pretty much what a lot of people are doing with short-term rentals.
Have you had any discussions with the health department about well and septic yet?
Yes, we have gotten our, we've,
You got your construction permit, I believe?
yeah, we have our construction permit, and we have talked to them about what we need for the septic, and we've done a soil report and things like that.
And Jamie, I guess a question for you, since the structure, if you haven't seen the picture there that Steve has, it's, you know, one of those, is that an exact replica or exact model of what you're,
Yeah, very similar.
would that, does that qualify as a structure? I know there's gonna be a building permit for the decks, but if we're talking short-term rental versus primitive campground, does the ordinance or in your realm define that as a,
Well, it defines everything, but, I mean, I'll give you background. They have applied for and got permits for the deck structures as observation platforms at this point. And I've been up there when they started construction. We don't know anything about this structure yet, but if this is a membrane structure, I mean, it'll have to meet, you know, all flame propagation standards of, you know, the code, which is basically NFPA 701. And if plumbing and water, you know, water and sewer are gonna be attached, I wasn't aware of that until this morning, which is fine, as long as you get health department approval. But it'll never be classified as a dwelling. It's gonna be a seasonal structure, you know. It'd never make it as a dwelling. It just couldn't be done. But I don't think that's the intent either.
and I guess, Alan, to that point, does that, since this won't be a dwelling, does that push it? Because I'm with Steve right now. I believe that short-term rentals would kind of encompass the whole thing if we did a multi-short-term rental SUP, but does that impact it, there being temporary or seasonal structures as primitive?
So, I mean, how primitive is it if we've got water and sewer attached to it? Even though the building code's not going to see it as a dwelling, I'm inclined to see that, you know, in the same way that we see density for, you know, building houses for the regulation of the number of them. They have plenty of acreage for the capacity that they're proposing, although it may hamper future development, because they can do up to 5 dwellings where they are now. So I think I would see it for zoning purposes the same way, although the building code certainly delineates between the two.
I would say, Mr. Chairman, we may want to go back and look. Memory serves me correct, I believe this is a similar proposal of short-term rentals that the gentleman that purchased that 30-some% slope property off of Etland Road and Leathers Road. I think it was a similar proposed type of structure used for short-term rental. It may be something we can use as guidance
Okay.
for this particular application as well.
I think you're right, actually. My memory recalls, yeah.
Hey, Zach, since we're talking about well and septic, how about we get our friendly neighborhood health department people to chime in a little bit?
Hey, I'll hold that thought.
This project is not ringing any bells with us. Did you submit it to the Madison Health Department?
So I believe for the well, the person that's gonna be helping us, he called to make sure that it wasn't gonna be an issue. For septic, we did the soil report. We haven't started on the septic yet. I don't know if we submitted or.
Oh, okay, you haven't
but-
submitted it then.
Hasn't been
Yeah, but-
constructed.
Has not.
Well, we have to approve
Yes, oh, absolutely.
before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, she has she has the drawing of the area delineated, showing less than 20% slope, like the area of the drain field. She had a OSC prepare that for her. So I guess,
But we called and kind of talked through and made sure it wasn't gonna be an issue beforehand.
Well, we probably need to talk a little more about that because it's gonna be commercial. You just wanna make sure you have improved, a safe water supply. I don't know who you spoke to, I'm not sure, but, yeah.
will you need, I guess, like verification that it doesn't need to go through ODW, like a written, like write-up of?
We
the-
wouldn't necessarily need anything written but it sounds like at the most, maybe 3 structures.
Yeah.
Um,
So
the-
less than 25 people, like absolutely. And then for the septic permit, I guess you need any confirmation that it's going to be domestic waste or anything like that?
Yeah, we would need a stamped engineered on that, on
Yeah.
those plans and a wastewater characterization.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we have the report for the septic already. We weren't planning on putting a new well.
No, that's fine. You just might need to get some bacterial testing done.
Since we're talking about the well and septic, the existing house, is that already, I assume, has water and sewer? So the 2 new sites would be on a different well and septic system?
It's gonna be on the same well, but different septic.
Okay, so you've got a well in place, all you need to do is the water testing. The incomplete house, is that already connected? That's
It's
not
not
connected to
connected to
anything?
anything.
No water or sewer in that?
Another question, was that other construction, does it have a perk? Did an OSC give you a report on the one that's halfway built? Because there could
We
be
haven't-
nothing
we
on
haven't
it.
done anything on that one.
Okay.
Does the health department have a record? We can submit a FOIA request for anything, but do you recall having any type of record on the partially built structure?
I remember when someone else was looking at it, I know Jamie was, I remember us talking about it, but it's been a while ago. I think we weren't sure. I don't know if there were records or not. There was.
recall.
Yeah. So we'd have to look at that
Okay.
again.
Great, thank you.
Since we're at stakeholders too, Mr. Nguyen, do you want to, Mr. Nguyen's with VDOT, so.
So, being that you're gonna go above 2 dwellings, and limited at 5, we can probably work with a low-volume commercial entrance, which really Shemp would probably have to, demonstrate to us that they have stopping sight distance, plan and profile view, and that would be it. And then we would probably issue a letter saying that it would be sufficient. It looks like you got a good entrance. So we just need that documentation, and then we get a letter back to you for that.
If we had, I guess, we need to do some deed research and, I need to talk with the owner to
Right.
confirm the rights of the easement and the access through the existing driveway. But if we are able, let's say theoretically, I'm just trying to, since you're here, trying to work through VDOT issues. If we are able, or let's say we're not able to intensify the use on the existing access easement, and could we site a new driveway in our existing pipe stem and have the easement to remain, serving maybe the main house, and permit a second entrance as private, as a private entrance serving 2 structures? If, I had a directed guest, like condition of special use permit approval, like guests can only use
So.
entrance located in this location or something like that. I'm hopeful we can work everything out, but I'm just like, since you're here, trying to work out
Okay.
all the options.
So, if you're trying to use the private on the existing for her house.
Yeah.
And then the others are coming in off the pipe stem, that would be deemed as commercial.
Okay,
So they're built the same way, it's just the commercial part of it has at stopping sight distance. So, just so it meets that, and then if you're gonna build an entrance, you know, we'll need to plan for that
Okay,
when you put that in. So, and then be permitted to build it and everything. It's kind of different using an existing entrance and proving it's okay versus building a new one and showing that it's okay also. So
Yep.
the construction part has to work in there with it.
okay. And
So
if,
it's possible, yeah.
and if there is, I guess if there is an issue with that third structure, could she build the second structure and still be permitted as a private entrance per VDOT with the existing location?
The regulations say 1 to 2 dwellings.
Dwellings, okay.
So probably.
Okay,
But I mean, that house is already half built. So, and she's able to get, if she tears it down, she could get a third. I mean, they're built the same, so it's just a matter of getting the site distance.
yep,
So,
okay. Awesome, thank you,
Okay.
appreciate all that.
And just on that point, I still would double check with the county ordinance on the 600 feet, because I don't want you to go down a rabbit hole of spending money on engineering or other thing, and if it is kind of a hard no on the,
One other thing too, glad you mentioned that. Since it's 231, a private entrance doesn't require access management, but a commercial entrance does. So that
Okay.
could be a big hurdle.
Okay,
And Madison is usually more restrictive than VDOT, so if you meet them, you're probably gonna meet us.
okay, all right, sounds good, thank you.
And for the applicant and engineer rep's purpose, for your courthouse record, you're gonna be looking for your plat, deed book 249, page 309. It shows the 50-foot approved right-of-way.
Going across the neighbor's property.
Yes, so if you go to courthouse records, it'll be deed book 249, page 309.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's a deed recorded with that plat?
That is correct.
Wonderful, thank you.
I don't see any other stakeholders in the room. Any other questions from staff?
It certainly seems like, since we've learned that the decks are going to be improved, that we're going down the short-term rental path for permitting. But beyond that, I don't have anything else for you.
I do, because I want to end this, because we'll probably sound regulatory. That's just the nature of government. How did you find us? Because certainly agritourism, Airbnb, I mean, that's things we have in this county. So how did you find us and decide to do your short-term rentals here?
So I actually live in Leesburg, Virginia, so it's not too far. We like the area, so we were just searching and found it on the MLS. We worked with a local realtor, and he was able to find it for us. Michael Cook, I don't know if you guys are
Okay,
familiar. Yeah.
thank you.
And I guess just a quick question on your, because I think that brings up a great point and kind of alludes to the recent work you guys did on the comprehensive plan. Was the comprehensive plan adopted on May 7th? Is that, okay, so the document that's contained in the board meeting from that night is the plan to work from? Okay,
That document is posted on the zoning page of the website as well, so
Okay.
if you don't want to go scroll through all that night's agenda stuff.
that's great. Okay, wonderful, thank you.
All right, seeing no other comments, does anyone?
Did you already ask for public comment?
Oh, no, I haven't yet, you're good, thank you. After I said I would. Public comment on this specific case only. Seeing none.
Very well, then, Mr. Chairman, I move that we advance this, this opportunity to the planning commission for review.
Second?
And point of order, is this as short-term rental, SUP? Okay. All right, the motion has been made and seconded to advance case number TBD, but for Ms. Ida Alemu to the Planning Commission as a short-term rental SUP. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you both very much.
Uh,
And-
Thank you.
To our applicants, Betsy, I will be following up with an email with instructions following this meeting, either today or tomorrow. You'll get that from me, and we'll talk about the next step in the process.
Thank you all so
Okay,
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the second case now. Mr. Wright, rezoning request. John Wright has requested an exploratory meeting to rezone the parcel identified as Madison County Tax Map 46-39A from split zoned A1 /C1 to A1 only. The purpose of this rezoning is to allow future boundary adjustment with Madison County Tax Map 4627 and facilitate a future subdivision. Mr. Nichol?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So Mr. Wright came into the zoning office the other day to discuss future plans of development. On the screen, you can see two parcels. The one that's outlined here is split zoned A1C1 with the, with the bulk of the property being an A1. And then there is an adjacent parcel to the west that's fully A1. The applicant, and I'll certainly let him speak for himself, but proposed to me a possible rezoning and a small boundary adjustment in order to achieve 6 acres on the parcel in question, 30-5C, in order to achieve 6 acres and be able to subdivide the property. So in discussions with previous zoning administrators and other county officials, he discussed a few different options. In any of the cases, we land here. So the timing seemed correct for the applicant to come in and discuss his proposal.
Thank you, Alan. If you'd like to go ahead and address and state your name and
I'm John Wright, I guess mostly known in the community as Steve. Don't hold that against me. But, yeah, I was, I guess ignorance is bliss, and I was quite blissful until sometime, well over a year ago, I was in the zoning office and discovered that that property is split zoned. I really don't have any immediate plans there, but down on the lower end, that is in the conservation zone, there is a 2-bedroom dwelling. It's a mobile home that is currently in a long-term rental program. The parcel that would be to the west of that, which is 46-27, I purchased that quite some time ago, previous to owning the 5.573 acres that we're discussing here. That, if you go back far enough, has an 8-foot, it was back in horse and buggy days, there is an 8-foot easement across the 46, I think 28, excuse me, I don't have my reading glasses on. But we know an 8-foot right-of-way is not enough, so when that 5.573 became available, sort of a deal between friends, I went ahead and purchased it. The use at that point in time, I used to, when it was the right time of year, I kept my bulls over there, kept them away from the cow herd. And so it's basically been an agricultural use since I've owned it. Now it's just basically overgrown. I don't run that cow herd anymore. But I do kind of want to have that option. I thought initially I would end up before the planning commission asking for a variance to split that 5.573 into 2 parcels. It would enable me to market the other one if I wanted to, and hopefully, depending on how the lines were drawn, I would still have clear access to that -27 parcel. Other than that, it's basically landlocked because an 8-foot right-of-way is just not usable, really, not functional. So I guess the long and the short of it is I just wanted to see if it was worthy of me pursuing this any further to see if I could get all that zoned agriculture. If not, I guess I'd have to examine my options in putting some of those properties together to meet the standards. But I'm certainly not a professional at this, but would appreciate any guidance and want to see get a sense of wind direction before I put more county staff to work and spend $600 of my dollars.
thank you, Mr. Wright. Any questions or comments for the applicant?
I'm just curious about this Trinity Lane that comes up, and it looks like there's the right-of-way that goes right along the border of the property. Is that what's now used for access to that property? Is that the 8-foot right-of-way you were talking about?
No, no.
No, okay.
The 8-foot right-of-way would be across, it is to Trinity, but it would be immediately to the north across that 46-28.
Okay, so it's not shown on this plat then, okay.
Let me see.
Yeah,
All right, well, Trinity dead ends right here. And I
Oh.
also own this property here. Most of this over in this section is all family farm throughout here. So, Trinity comes around the corner, goes past a parcel here that at one time, this was all one parcel. This was lopped off as a non-conforming lot during a previous owner's divorce proceedings. I think that's a 2 acre with a small dwelling that's in disrepair right now. But anyway, down on this end, right in here, is where I have that 2-bedroom mobile home that I do have rented on a long-term basis. There I have one neighbor. The only other neighbor is right up right in here. That's it's a Dean, Danny and Cheryl Dean property. This is my property here, but I was just, as I say, I was unaware of the fact that we had split zoning here. It would make, I don't know, it would make more sense to me, I don't know about anyone else, that if we could just clean that up, and if the one end is agriculture, the rest is really more residential than agriculture, because that dwelling, that 2-bedroom mobile's been there for years. I said that, and that is a non-conforming lot right there, because that was 2 acres some years ago.
yeah, the reason I asked was if, as you say, the state road goes all the way down to that point on the corner.
Right.
I was concerned about the access with already having 2 or 3 dwellings there, but you've got access, you've got frontage on a state road.
Right.
So that's not a
There's,
question, okay.
Access to that mobile is right in here.
Yeah,
And there's been a farm entrance up right in this area for 3 decades.
yeah. So essentially, you're not gonna run afoul of the subdivision ordinance, six entrances on a private road, so you've got plenty of frontage there for.
No,
yeah.
that's all frontage. It's a rather narrow lot, as you
Yeah,
can see.
yeah. Okay, that's good, thank you.
Well, so the portion of this property that is zoned conservation, I mean, properties are zoned conservation for a reason. But that reason, what I was gonna follow up on is already just kind of nullified by the fact that you've already got a residence on the conservation part. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because I was going to ask you if it was too steep or too rocky, or too, the slopes and all that stuff, but that's not an issue. So, yeah, I'd be inclined to question why it was conservation to start with in this case. But, I mean, you look at a statement of intent for conservation, and it clearly says why it is, but, fragile nature of the district, covers steep slopes, hardwood forests, all that kind of stuff. But you've already got a residence there and access to it, and it's not falling off of a cliff, obviously, so.
No, and one thing full disclosure, there is a barn up there
Yeah.
that it's not shown on this, not shown on the map or the
Yeah.
plat anywhere, but there's an old barn that's in fair to middling repair, but. No, the only thing, and I discussed it with Alan and also with his predecessor, we don't really know why that line was drawn like that. If you go to the east side,
Yeah, that's all C1. No, west side.
On the
is-
46, just on the 4639, that is, that's drawn on a boundary line, basically. That's between my family farm is all in the conservation, the one immediately to the north. It's pretty much the lay of the land is very similar. The use has always been similar, you're just running some cattle on there.
Yeah, and looking at it, it looks like from the satellite view that a good chunk of all of this C1 is actually in agricultural use. I mean, you can see cleared fields and cattle trails throughout, so, yeah. I mean, all of that, you're right, in the center is all C1, but it's all, you can tell it's cleared. I don't know why they did it that way either.
So that was my whole
Yeah.
intent originally, was just to get the call made on that to see if it was worth going further and splitting that one off. The way the property lies in there, it lends itself pretty well to leaving 2.5 acres or so where the mobile is. There's a creek that comes down there in a low area, and you wouldn't deny any access, or, I mean, everything's already in place.
Well, I mean, if you do this, you'd have to have 3 acres, not 2.5, right? You understand?
Right.
That's the reason Alan was saying you have to do a boundary adjustment to bring the 5.573 up to 6 to begin with.
Right, and he and I discussed that briefly, and I have the 8 acres back there. It might take a little
Mr. Young, there's an adjacent parcel
creative,
Yeah,
that he owns that he would adjust.
that's
do
right.
do some creative surveying in order to make them functional lots.
Okay.
That, I think that opportunity is there.
Just to kind of put the question at ease here, is there a steep mountain slope, something like that on this corner, or is it just, I mean, is the terrain something that would, I mean, you've already got a building on it, so, or the trailer, but it's not the side of a mountain or anything?
No, the one behind that, the 4627, if anything was gonna be zone conservation, it should be there.
Yeah,
There are some steep slopes on there.
so,
It just runs up to the top
Oh,
of,
okay.
of Banks Mountain right
yeah, excellent, we've got the topo map on here. Yeah.
Well, no, it just kinda got, it kinda
Yeah.
got.
For unexplained reasons.
Don't know how I got there, I'd kinda like to change it, if I could.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of
problem
times these were kind of arbitrary when they were first done anyway, yeah.
So what would be next recommend, would this go to planning commission for, or is this in-house?
Without some opposition, it would be nice to hear a motion that he be recommended to move forward to the planning commission with a rezoning request.
Yeah, if there's no public comment on it, then
Yeah,
I'll
let's
make that.
see if there's any public comment.
Going to the public, any comment on? Seeing none.
So moved.
Perfect. All right, the motion has been made and seconded to move the rezoning request to the planning commission for the rezoning of tax map 46-39A as planned out by Mr. Nichols. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Mr. Wright.
Thank you for your time.
I'll be in touch with you in the next day or so for next steps, sir.
All right, third case, case number SU-06-01, Polly of the Blue Ridge Special Use Permit. Ann Gore has submitted an application on behalf of Rebecca Gore for a special use permit to operate a primitive campground in accordance with Madison County Zoning Ordinance Article 15-A on the parcel identified as County Map, Tax Map 56-7A. The subject parcel is 118.273 acres and is zoned A1. Mr. Nichols?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So our applicant, I first met our applicant over the phone a few months ago. We had become aware that she had a vintage camper that she was placing for rent down near Rochelle. And we had a great conversation about the requirements for permitting. And at that time, it did not serve her needs to go forward with a permit, so she stopped operating. Plans have changed, and now she would like to operate, and she has come in to apply for a special use permit. I do have her application. A copy of it is in your packet.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Ms. Gore, if you'd like to address anybody?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for your time. Yes, I got a 1973 Go Tag-Along trailer, and I got a little obsessed with her. And when my boys and I aren't using her, I parked her in my yard, and I'm like, you know what? I'd love to share this with other people. It's kind of a unique experience. Yep, there she is in the fall. She has standard one bed, but I can turn the kitchen bed or the kitchen table into another bed, and I have another twin that can fold out too. It's a really neat setup. There is a kitchenette with a sink and a gas stove and an oven, and it's completely restored. I work to restore. I put all food grade plumbing or pipes in. I have the garden hose that is RV marine garden hose linked to 2 filters, but it's all being fed from a spigot on the side of my house. And the power, there is electric, but it just comes straight from the shed my dad built, how you would plug up any camper that you'd have in your yard. And I really enjoyed her. I'd love to continue to use her as a little bit of an income, and just having an opportunity to host people in our really nice community as a native of Madison. And yeah, as a rule follower also, like Alan reaching out to me and learning that I needed to go through this process was actually really great. So whatever I can do to make this work, please. I'm here to answer your questions and your concerns. Thanks.
Thank you. I guess my first question, and this is because Alan and I brought this up in discussion quite a bit, is there deeded access to the highway with this, or is there an easement? Are you going through a property
Nope,
as well?
it's just on my
It's all in
driveway
the driveway?
or mom's driveway. I'm acting as an agent to my mother, who is the owner of the property. And you can see her signature is on my application. I also did a rough drawing if you wanted to, it's in your packet so you can kind of see the association. It's really right next to the shed my dad built, and then
Shelby Road.
right in between, I think it's, there's my justification.
Uh-huh.
Here's my rough draw. So it's right within, I would say, 80 feet from my house. And it is off of the property line of the Bonzos, who have that long driveway right to the west of our property line. Of course, we've been in conversation, and they understand, and they are fully, they're actually really excited because they just owned a micro wedding event space. So this kind of gives them another option, if this is approved, to have people stay close to the property when they have events. There is a building that is no longer standing. If you see where I wrote shed, here, let me use the laser pointer like you've asked everybody else to do. This was a wood, like lean-to that Daddy built that I just took down because it was, I don't know, 47 years old, and when you don't use it, you lose it. So that's been taken down. So it's just the shed and the home that are still existing structures on the property.
Couple more questions.
Sure.
Is Polly going to have any brothers or sisters coming up soon, or is this the only one that you're gonna have on the property?
Well, admittedly, I would have loved to have another brother or sister, but right now I'm actually just going to focus on her. And if it comes to the point where, yeah, maybe I find another and initiate that, of course I would come to and talk to you guys first. One note too, she does have a porta potty that's being serviced by K&S. I have a contract with them. They come every 2 weeks. Like I'm sure you guys had the conversation with Carrie, sort of a similar situation with her campground.
The only other question I had, you mentioned the micro event space. Is that your neighbor that has it, or is it?
Yeah, my
so-
neighbor to the west. So this property here, it is the Bonzos. They just got approval, according to them, to open a micro wedding event space.
Seasonal and brief, talk to me later.
Yikes.
No, not why I asked. But with that, if there's a neighbor that's potentially functioning with you in a business capacity, and they want to expand and maybe do weddings in your field or anything like that, is that? it's
I'm
just-
not interested in
okay,
that.
okay.
And I don't think my mom is either. This
Okay.
is just something for me and my boys to kind of have as a side hobby and to kind of teach them. It's also helping my boys kind of learn some business management while they're young men and know how to interact with people who are different than them.
And I'm only questioning simply, it's
No,
easier
no,
easier to
please.
get the bigger permit out of the way first instead of having to come back
No,
if
I'm
your
not-
dreams and aspirations change.
I think that would be one of my constraints, and I would completely push pause on the whole thing if it changed any of the zoning for my mom's property, because I want to retain the agriculture zoning, and I obviously want to make sure that her home is respected and her property is respected. So that's my number one constraint of all of it, and following y'all's rules.
Any other questions, Jamie?
I got a couple comments. So you have water going into the camper, right?
Yeah,
Well,
like-
where's the sewage going?
So I don't have a sewage. It's just, so like when it drains from the kitchen sink,
Yep.
is that what you're talking about? It just goes into a tank that you have for RVs, and you just empty it out into the woods.
And that's a problem.
Okay,
And I'll let the health department discuss that with you.
okay.
Gonna be a question, if there's plumbing inside, you know, it obviously has to drain somewhere.
Sure.
So even gray water is considered sewage in
Okay.
the state of Virginia, so it has to go to an approved sewage system,
Okay,
you know, if you were gonna do that. In porta potties, I mean, in our regulations, it's pretty much for a special event or a temporary event.
okay.
I know we kind of compromised with one, not too long ago, you know, because she was saying, I guess that was more seasonal, so we worked it out. But anyway, so these are just things to throw out, to
Okay.
think about. Porta Johns are, you know, like, you know, Madison Fair, you know, events like that, a temporary type situation. For sewage disposal. So on the RV, there's not a tank itself, or there is?
There is a tank, and
Okay.
it's one that you can wheel and dump. Like if I take it to a campground with my boys, I can take it and dump it into
Okay.
whatever like gray water tank they have at the campground.
Okay, because it's supposed to be an integral part of the RV, that's the exemption, so to speak, but if it's a breakaway or if it's separate, then we get into the pump and haul
Okay.
kind of situation. So I'm just throwing things out just to, you know, to think about. And then as far as your water supply, is that like a private well?
Yeah, it's the well that's attached to the house,
Okay.
the structure.
Yeah, we would just, you know, probably some bacterial testing, you know, since it would be commercial, you're renting it out, just for safety procedures. So that would be our comments.
Emily, follow up to you. Is that something like K&S could do a pump out of gray water as well if there's a tank that's even if she puts a couple of bolts in this tank, puts it underneath it, is that,
Then
Or
you
is
get into the pump and haul
okay?
category, and in the past, the county hasn't wanted to go down that road, but
Even with gray water?
yeah. Right now, that's considered sewage in the state of Virginia.
I have a question. So if I had a campground and I had, say, a dish bucket, and I'm washing my dishes, and I just have that dish bucket and I dump it in the woods, if I had just a traditional campground with no sink inside of an RV, what are the rules and regulations in regards to how you dispose of that water if you're just camping in a primitive campground?
Yeah, if it's a regulated campground, that gray water would have to be dumped into, you know, some type of sink that goes to an approved system. Yep.
And Emily, I guess, follow up on, K&S is pumping it, it's not an incinerator, it's not a, it's actually a pump on the septic, or the
Yeah, I
porta
just have
john
a
now.
contract with them that they come, so I'm renting or leasing, I guess, their porta potty, and they come every 2 weeks or every week if I want them to come and clean and like refresh the porta potty.
Do they have options where a sink is attached, where the water goes into their pump?
I'd have to ask Kevin, but I'm not really sure. I mean, there's certainly a way to link the sink, because it is very like the RV is not fancy like the ones that we have today. So I can hook a hose up to the bottom of the spigot where it goes into the gray tank, and I could feed it into the porta john, but like I would definitely want to ask Kevin first, because I'm not really sure how that would.
I think Emily would probably be the first.
I have a
Yeah.
question for Emily and Jamie that might lead this discussion. If the camper did not have the sink, if there was no plumbing fixture in the camper and it were simply a dry place to stay, is this a concern?
Yeah, I mean, then that takes care of the gray water. So there's really nothing to, yeah, that negates that, yeah.
All right, if I may add on to that. We just talked seasonal. I don't know what Ms. Graveri's was as far as seasonal, but for this case here, Ann, are you thinking, what's your duration of your short-term rental? Is it like an April through October, or?
Well, I wouldn't want to stay in it in the winter.
Right.
It's cold. So I would definitely close it down in the winter. I don't know, based on all of our wild weather that we've had, I guess it just depends. Like if it's below freezing, I would not have it open. I think that would kind of be a liability too, that I'm not willing to kind of embrace. So, yeah, it's definitely seasonal. So the
Okay.
answer to your question directly is yes, it's
Okay.
seasonal.
All right, thank you. So looking your way, Emily, are you looking at seasonal? Now, I know you gave the example of a fair, so that's more of a temporary event, but from a seasonal standpoint, is there a certain day limit, or what is a season in the BDH's eyes?
I mean, to be honest, that probably was a stretch. It's really supposed to be for like, an event. I mean, but, that's something for y'all to think of as a county. I mean, potentially you could have a bunch of porta johns, if other people wanted, this became a thing. This, like I said, this is just topics to think about.
Sure, appreciate that. The permitting, so I'm hearing one, Polly is one. We heard no brothers and sisters at this time. So where does that land? Because I think there's like I don't know if it's 3 rentals or 3 campers, but there's like a rule of 3 with VDH. Can you
Right,
please go into that with the applicant?
With VDH, for 3 campsites or more, it does require a VDH campground permit.
I would only have one.
Okay, thank you.
Just back to the gray water, do you offer shower in there?
Nope,
So
no
there is no
showers.
So it's purely the sink?
Yeah, it's just if they're washing their dishes.
So this is basically an early 70s self-contained camper without a bathroom. It's
Yes.
just got the sink in the kitchen.
Yes.
You're paying taxes on those dishes too, you could go to paper.
Oh, don't worry, Brian already got it. I already paid those taxes.
We thank you for your business.
Yes.
So the only problem appears to be the holding tank for the sink.
It seems so.
I know sometimes they had a water reservoir and then the holding tank. Does this have that situation, or is this strictly the water line hookup, your hose hookup?
Do you mean for the gray water now?
No, just for your little kitchenette. sometimes these RVs had a water tank, so they were self-contained.
Yeah, I actually, I think the people who I bought it from, they used one of those 5-gallon jugs that you would get at Lowe's,
Okay.
and they would use a pump. But I
Sure.
actually decided to upgrade it, because if I was to take it to, Madison Vines, I could hook it up to the spigot with my hose and have water running from the sink, easy peasy.
Is it still on wheels?
Oh, yeah,
So you can move it easily?
oh, yeah.
Well, that solves your problem. Discharge your gray water at Madison Vines.
They don't
The
allow-
health department's
They
not
don't
going to
allow
permit
it?
that.
No,
How about if you rent a space for a day and take it there? Then they
you have to ask them about that, but they don't allow campers to roll in there.
don't allow it there.
We discussed that before with them. But if you rent there, that's a different thing.
Yeah, I've thought about like parking her there, but, then that's a little, I think that would be even more complicated.
Going off of what they said before, Polly may not be allowed there, so I don't know.
Yeah,
But, yeah,
I
it's not
think
big
she's a
enough
little
for him,
old,
yeah.
she's an old lady.
No
so-
offense to Polly.
Yeah, she's cute, she's just old.
I presume there must be some, I know lots of people that have these, well, not that old, but have RVs, campers, and they have the situation, they have to discharge somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, there is quite a community, I have learned, with
Yeah.
vintage campers.
So I'm curious about, there's bound to be some kind of mechanism for dealing with that,
Yeah, and,
especially since it's still mobile. You can still move it to
yes,
places.
sir. The solutions that I have researched and found is what I have been using, which
Of course,
is
okay.
you hook it up underneath the camper, there's a hose that links to a blue tank, and that's where the dishes water goes. I could get it upgraded to have all the fancy plumbing and all of the things that the modern campers have, but I'm not a rich woman, so.
Plus, that would be going in the wrong direction for this.
Exactly, I kind of want to retain her uniqueness and vintage appeal.
Moving forward, Mr. Nguyen, anything from you, from VDOT stakeholders?
So, if it's just the home and the camper, that would fall underneath the private entrance, which you already have, so nothing would be for VDOT.
That's great news.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, Zach, I would just say, if we move this SUP forward, we've discussed this in the past, we just want to put language in the SUP that we're going to take a look at the camper to make sure it's safe for people to stay in. There's camper standards, we just want to ensure that the county's going to back you, that we're not putting them in danger.
I would love for y'all
Yeah.
to come and see it, in fact.
And then some resolution would have to come without water in the camper. Something has to be resolved.
Is that something that I would work with y'all to determine, or would I just say, sorry, it is a dry camper and I don't provide water?
Yeah, I
It's a
think-
dry campsite?
I think Emily can give you the legal guidance and then maybe do some research on your own if there is an alternative. but-
Okay. I'm curious enough to see what my options are.
I'd say
Yeah,
start
we-
with state compliance and then work your way back to alternatives that impact your guests.
Not too long ago, we did have an analogous situation. We had a business application with a similar sink situation. And they had a storage container, and then they were able to, of course, it was under, they had all kinds of state guidelines as far as the fact that it was a food service place. But they were allowed to take that container of gray water back to their building where the kitchen was and dispose of it there. Is that, if it's just not dumped on the ground, if they have a way to deal with that?
I have a lot of sinks in my house.
I mean, what size container are we talking about? Is this like
It's-
5 gallons?
It's
or-
a 10-gallon
10
on
gallons.
wheels that,
Okay.
I can pick up and wheel and pump out into my own toilets. And typically I would say the most comfortable stay would be max a family of 4. So we're not looking at a lot of waste.
Well, it sounds like
Is
the
that
one
a-
point probably to address is this one. Any other comments, feedback from panelists here? I'll do public comment now. Any public comment from anybody on this one? Knowing what we know then about the one water item to discuss, is there any direction from the committee?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that the applicant and BDH could work on that one item. So with knowing that, I believe the rest of the business plan here kind of checks the boxes again on agritourism. This is in the tourism realm. So with that, I recommend we move this along for the planning commission.
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded to move case number SU-06-01, Poly of the Blue Ridge Special Use Permit to the Planning Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll see you in the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Gore. I'll reach out in the next day or so.
All right, and the next one's a big one, so we'll get into it. Case number TBD, but Madison Hills Events. Molly Wilshire, is that, okay, has requested an exploratory meeting to discuss an application for a special use permit for an event venue in accordance with Madison County zoning ordinance Article 14-18. The proposed event venue will exist on 3 parcels which are identified as Madison County Tax Map 40-43, 40-44, and 40-45. The total area of the 3 parcels is 186.476 acres. All 3 parcels are zoned A1. Mr. Nichols?
I think that the applicant is more than capable of presenting her plan, and we should defer to her.
Perfect.
Hello.
Welcome to the county. if
Thank you
would
so much.
address
My name
you.
is Molly Wilshire. Like you just stated, it's 2599 Oak Park is the address of it. And I am proposing a seasonal light show that is just a little more intense than a standard home light show. As a bit of background, I have a holiday install company, and I travel all over the country putting up Santa sets at malls all over the world. I'm a fabricator and designer for those things. So when first looking at the property, I went, oh, I can build some really big stuff to make. And then talking to townspeople more, they said, well, why don't you do one here? And I said, okay, let me look at that. That on the property that were already there, that red line there. Ooh, is there a, yes. That red line behind y'all, that's the trail that's already kind of existent, and then I've continued it on to make a full 3/4 mile loop there. There's parking for 840 cars. Of that parking, you could put the 840 on our driveway to get it off of the road almost, pretty quickly there. We wouldn't be backing up traffic. I would propose putting some under 256 square foot for lots of them, some of them a little larger, but a vendor stall, so someone could have either their, farmer's market produce, or there's crafting, there's local potters, jewelers, things of that nature. So people could come see lights and then also participate in a shopping mart for holiday time. This would be proposed on the weekends, so an evening event that everything would shut off at 10 to eliminate light pollution in the area.
The vendor stalls, they're gonna be permanent? I mean, you would build
I
vendor
would
stalls?
build it. It takes away, if you have tents, you have a lot of liability, and people that have, even if they say they have done it before, I swear they have never put a tent up before in their life. They don't understand sinks. They trip people with their lines. There's a lot of timber on the property that I would utilize as large timber structures. They're more fire resistant over time. Whenever there's public, I'm always concerned about fire and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
So I would like to put a large building that I have yet to have a spot for. I actually would move that now that we looked at it. So A large building, 60 by 100, an open air with a roof on top of it, 27-foot peak on it would be kind of a gathering place if there was inclement weather or if you had some type of performance that needed to be undercover. You have a band for holiday music, things of that nature. And the proposed site for that would be over here, which we confirmed yesterday walking it, so. We're in the preliminary, just trying to figure out what would be amicable to the county, to everyone around.
I'm just curious, is this like I've seen light shows, a lot of them you drive through it.
Walkthrough.
This is a walkthrough.
This is walkthrough. It's much more intimate. You can get up close to the lights and the sculptures and things. You have a lot less liability with people being in their cars, looking and driving a different way. And it allows us to put a density of entertainment. So I can put a light display here and then 10 feet later another one, as opposed to having to have that driving distance between the two. So this would be a walkthrough event.
And this trail, what would it be? Because I'm thinking, accessibility.
Absolutely. So this is something that I can do in a manual wheelchair.
Yeah.
I've already tested that because I have little kids, strollers. I'm not looking for anybody to get stuck in the mud. ADA is incredibly important to me.
Okay.
So I can do it in a manual wheelchair by myself. We have one on property to test that because that's something we do with our sets regularly for Santa sets. It's about 12 to 16 feet wide too, so you'd have a good berth for that.
Now, parking, you had a big number there.
There's 840, those tiny little are each a car.
Yeah.
And if I don't pack them in so people can maneuver, with the current open air space, there's about 840 parking spaces with a lot of space to drive around.
Yeah.
I mean, could I fit more? Sure, but safety is always my concern.
So you're going to have quite a few guests out there,
The average-
potentially.
Potentially, the average guest experience is about 45 minutes to a light show that's a walkthrough.
Yeah.
So you would have turnover with something that would be open from 5 to 9, 5 to 10 p.m.
Just thinking about bathroom facilities for
You'd
this
have to use
volume.
porta-johns. You'd have to use porta-johns for something temporary like that. The septic couldn't handle it. I've talked to septic engineers. They could design a large enough, it's almost like a holding structure that is then pumped, which is essentially a porta-john, but because it's seasonal, I don't see the need for that expense. The other large festivals that I work with use the same kind of massive amounts of porta-johns with cleaning after the 3 days of the event.
Yeah, and I think you heard the health departments.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you would talk to them
Oh, yes.
regarding that. I just saw lots
So
of
this is an
people's-
event, yeah.
This is an event. Yes.
All right, right now, at this point, this is the only, this one seasonal event, that's all that you're
When I,
thinking about.
that is all I'm thinking about. When I spoke to the Economic Development Committee, they said, well, let's write in it that because you're in agriculture and you have this space and you're putting all the effort in to build these buildings, to allow you one seasonal event a year. I would love to have a farmer's market in the spring when all the fresh produce and thing is there. You could have the same type of thing where it's weekends only, but allow people to congregate with the kind of crafting vendor world in conjunction with a sales shop, so that people are going for the farmer's market, but they're lingering, and that makes people buy more.
And just to clarify, seasonal being four seasons of the year, I mean, up to 4 events per year, is that what?
Yeah, 4 individual events a year. That's what was proposed. And again, come at it with a larger permit so that I don't have to come back. Will I do 4 events? Absolutely not. That's entirely too many events.
Part of the reason I was asking is, the way the event venue ordinance is worded, it would be to your advantage to flesh out this with all of your proposals, so you do it at one time. Because it's not designed to have you keep coming back to say, I want to add this on.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, it's just that your focus right now is this.
The focus
No,
would be
we're not.
this, with being able to utilize it in a spring to give us 2 seasons, but due to my other businesses, 4 seasons would be out of the question, probably for my sanity, because I Christmas all year.
The only other thing that I think it's probably been on the edge of several of the comments. If you're considering that much traffic, you may need to have some long discussions with VDOT
Sure.
off of Oak Park Road.
Sure. We have good line of sight. When I purchased the property, that was a consideration. It's a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, which allows for you need 500 feet. I have 700. So I'm well within those criteria, but happy to chat with him about that. I also have plans. I need to make the driveway bigger, just so I have better egress. I don't have to. It makes me feel better knowing someone could get in and out in the case of an emergency.
And Mr. Nguyen has the mic. Do you want to, anything to add right now?
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Here we go.
with, with these many vehicles, we're gonna be looking at a commercial entrance
Okay?
and possibly a right turn lane.
Okay.
And, but I'll have to see a plan. I mean, it's so broad.
Sure.
I need to look, detail it down a little bit more of what's involved, and, we'll need a site plan for at least the entrance. And, in that site plan, we'll have to review the intersectional site distance, and, that in a plan and a profile view also from your engineer.
Okay.
So, I'm sure they know where to find all the regulations, but, yeah, it's gonna be a major undertaking for that, just so you know.
That's all right.
Okay.
Is Oak Park Road at that point right there, has that got a line down the middle of it?
It does.
Oh, yeah, look at that. It didn't used to.
So we're gonna go on the speed limit and how much traffic they produce as far as what they need for entrance. And if it's more than 5, we go more than 5 dual lanes, so that's 50 vehicles a day, and she's proposing 840. I think we're well into that. We're well into the commercial entrance, plus possibly a right turn lane, depending upon the traffic on that road. So,
Even for a weekend only, for Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Okay.
because it could actually, if you have a bunch of things that you're adding, like Zach says, then once you build it, it's done. You could
Sure.
You could almost have weddings, your farmer's market throughout the year.
Okay.
I mean,
Sure,
if you want
sure,
to,
absolutely, yeah.
when you retire.
Right.
Yeah. So you gotta look to the future. But, once we approve it, we don't want you to.
Have to,
We'd rather
right.
you be prepared for what's upcoming versus having to come back and rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. That's
Oh,
just more
always.
money out of your pocket.
Mhm.
So I mean, I don't want you to spend any more than you have to.
Exactly.
But we need to meet the VDOT regulations for that. Okay?
Yeah,
I have a question.
sure,
There's a home out there, a dwelling.
there is.
I mean, from your description, you don't plan to reside there.
No, that would just be like a kitchen for some more grounds manager to reside there.
Oh, okay.
For off-season, it's so remote, I worry about anything that's a structure built has problems with people, and they're curious, it's not their fault, they just want to go see cool things, and if they know an event goes on, I'm sure they're gonna pick around. We do plan on putting a very tall fence around about 100 of the acres as well.
Okay, so just remain as a residence. Someone,
Exactly.
okay.
I have a couple of economic questions.
Sure.
Employees and staffing, will you tap into the local market, high school kids and stuff for traffic? and-
Absolutely. It would be a requirement of our vendors that unless they had someone who was direct family, they would have to pull from the local market. I'm not interested in bringing their road crew along with them. It causes more headache and traffic for me. I've worked in the vendor event industry for 25 years, and I have extensive experience with being able to utilize the local work as well as the highly skilled craftsmen, that you kind of got to balance that out.
And for the holiday light one, what are we talking seasonal employee fluctuation, or
It would be at least 100 people.
at least 100?
Between ticket sales and, hot cider people, and a jeweler needs someone to sit there and sell things, so things of that nature.
One other question, and it's a little off topic, but the electric grid, do you have to do anything special with REC? Because our utilities are,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, okay.
So I've talked with them. We're also utilizing solar that we would like to put over top of the parking areas. so that also it doesn't get as muddy, so that we don't have to pull people out of the grass, but they can drive nicely off of the grass. And then they have shade if we were to do a summer event, or even just to have my personal equipment parked under there. It's always nice not to sit in a hot tractor seat. And then that solar would kind of off balance. REC doesn't see a problem with it. I utilize LED lighting as well, which takes significantly less, as we're aware, than the incandescent lights used to. So there's many systems available now in the high industry light tech world to reduce power drain.
And I just heard you mention solar, I hadn't heard that. What, a massive structure? I mean, like, are we talking?
No. Like basically, I have a carport for 3 cars, and I put solar on top of that. That can power a significant number of lights for the season.
Okay, that brings up another
Sure.
point that you'll need to do some research on. The county does have domestic solar. There's part of our ordinance that does deal with that.
Yes.
So you would need to verify what you're doing with that.
Yeah.
This is obviously not a commercial solar
No.
facility, so that wouldn't be, that's much more complex. But
Oh, absolutely. And like Jamie was mentioning, there's a structure there. Putting solar on the house just makes sense, you know, it's
Right.
already wasted space in a way.
you said maybe a 3 carport size unit. Is that all you're envisioning, or are you thinking about more of that parking area being covered like that?
If eventually it behooved the people and they said, oh, I really like the shade and I find a need for the solar, I can see us looking at that in the future. But for now, I don't need that to make the light show happen. I can use the regular power grid. I have been talking with REC extensively about all of the power needs for this and to drop lines and things like that.
Are your vendors going to also have electrical supply there? or-
Generally, they don't, and they're fine with that.
Okay, so,
If we were to provide lights, we would be the best of the best venue that's out there. So they come with batteries and other portable charging things for their square systems and things of that nature.
okay, so your proposed structures are not going to have plumbing, not going to have water, not going to have electricity?
Essentially a four-sided open, like timber structure with a roof and a decking, so they have a level platform, you know, ramps or anything for ADA accessibility. I have a lot of older vendors, like a lot of jeweler friends and potters. They just want a level thing to stand on and to put their chair on, that kind of a structure. It looks of grandeur, but nothing with plumbing or electrical.
So what kind of building situation would they be in? Since there's no plumbing, no electrical, no,
Well,
Just a stall.
they're
Yeah.
like stalls for vendors.
Small building, yeah.
We would just issue a permit.
Exactly, for each of them, yes,
Get a
under,
permit
yeah.
for 'em, we're gonna, they build it, we look at it, make sure it's
Yeah,
safe.
I'll bring you all the
Okay,
different designs for them that we have.
so that's not a problem area. Good, okay.
No.
You got a rough idea of how many of these you're planning? I see you've got a area there about halfway, 2/3 of the way through your,
Sure, I would
Trail.
sprinkle them along the trail so that people
okay.
have time to linger and they look at the lights, and when, you know, mom's bored with lights, they look at jewelry, and dad's bored with this, and they can kind of stay a little bit longer. A general show that would serve 800 people would have roughly 180 vendors. I'm not that ambitious for year one, but I could see us getting there in a year or two.
Can you fit more than one vendor in each building, or is it one per building?
Would depend on the size of the building. But generally speaking, they function in 10 by 10, 20 by 20, a standard tent size operation. Sometimes you'll get an 8-foot by, you know, a table size for them. So could you fit them? Absolutely. If you have more than one smaller vendor, yes, you could utilize that structure for 1 or 3 gallery style vending. Absolutely.
Jamie, does the 256 rule,
No,
because it's commercial?
it's not
Doesn't
a
apply.
storage shed or playhouse.
Okay.
Right.
I was just asking,
Something
yeah.
different, yeah.
Okay.
Two more questions.
Sure.
And you don't have to answer this if you don't want, because I don't forget into disclaimers or anything, but do you have an example website, or you said you've done several of these that we could look at that has?
Sure. elfproductionsinc.com is my elf company. And if you would like, I'm happy to send Alan or whatever email, kind of my background portfolio. I was at the economic development meeting and gave a little spiel of all the things I did. I've worked on everything from the Chestnut Street Bridge, the historical part in Philadelphia. I was the mold maker for that. So I do large-scale projects. The world's largest Buddha in China. There's a second world largest Buddha at their gift shop. I made that. He's 22 feet tall. All those trees I welded. We will wrap trees. That giant wreath is in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm on top of a 95-foot atrium lift that I own. So that is part of how I put up Christmas displays. That lantern in the wreath is 6.5 feet tall. And so that is a welded structure that I could fit into to bolt it together for the City Creek Mall in Utah.
You have visions for like the world's largest possum for Madison? What is your idea?
If y'all want, I'll build whatever you want. That's fine. So that's a Santa set that I constructed. So the sleigh itself is 25 feet tall. The bag is another 27 feet on top of that. Bag is constructed out of a fire-safe, flame-retardant material around an aluminum frame that was welded. The walls themselves are a stainless steel with a polycarbonate outside, so it is bulletproof, although it doesn't need to be. But each of those walls being 20-some feet tall, you and I, one of us, could lift those together. That has a badging station, so as kids go through the line, you get a badge made with your picture on it, and you scan it, so Santa has a little screen and knows your name before you come up to it.
And this would be implemented in your idea here?
Something
Similar-
like
similar.
this, yes.
ESPN.
Having Santa, having a Krampus, having, you know, the Saint Nicholas, and kind of representing all of the iterations of Santa was something we had entertained with a winter festival. So, you know, yes, there's Coca-Cola Santa, and then there's 500 other types. That's a jaguar on the side for Coco Chanel. So I sculpted the jaguars out of a steel tube and then wrapped it with lights. There's it from the down with the big bow on the outside. And then we also did those frames. Those we call string trees. Those are 30 feet tall with lights. They dance and spin. So to music, they can kind of do a cool little thing. That's a sphere that is a LCD screen that's wrapped, so I could put your face on it. It was 2020, so we put Tiger King on it for a while to test it. That's me inside of a giant deer head that we made. That's an aluminum deer head. That's actually at Short Pump Town Center in Richmond. You can go see that every year. That's a backlit holiday selfie spot display for the Northern Lights in Ohio. That's in Norfolk, Virginia. That is the MacArthur Center. We don't make the trees themselves. China does a very good job of that, making them incredibly inexpensively. But the ice set itself, we did make. So there's giant globes on the archway. You can see it's uplight. There's intrinsically lit plastics. That's the Short Pump Town Center and a tree we do. The two deer. So we did the Chanel displays for Christmas in New York City. That's another back of a different Santa set in a different mall, but we made 12 of them for all over the country. That's our crew, putting together lights, proving that we actually do things.
I got the idea.
Yeah.
So from a tourism standpoint, if you've been to Boar's Head's Wonder Lights, this blows that out of the water, to me, having been there.
So seeing that this property has
Neighbors.
a significant number of neighbors on both sides, so you're gonna leave a considerable amount of buffer
So
in
if-
between
A 14-foot fence is planned around,
goings.
all around.
Wooden, I mean, a solid fence?
There's enough timber, and I have a sawmill on the property, so the plan is a 14-foot fence, and then I have a 25-year sound engineer working with me to make anything be silent from the back of the stage and in the front, because Christmas music all year, as I know, can get really frustrating as someone who listens to it on repeat. So our neighbors would be undisturbed, is the goal.
So do any
There
of the
would-
neighbors know anything about this at this point?
Not until I had a preliminary meeting and
Yeah.
thought it was even,
Okay.
if it was even plausible.
Yeah. Well,
I've
knowing
chatted
what
with
the
a-
neighbors think is a portion of the plausible,
Oh, it's
too,
a huge,
so,
it's a
yeah,
huge
okay.
portion of the plausible.
You're gonna fence
Okay.
the entire perimeter of the property, or just?
So
from-
it's kind of like a hatchet shape, so take away the leg of it, if you would.
Okay. You gonna have any trees
That.
left?
Not the section to the
Okay.
south, but the preliminary portion. Was it primary portion?
So the residence has a pool, so we're fencing the entirety of the residence part with the pool just to keep everybody out of that. Again, people are going to be curious because if there is anything going on, I just want to keep them away from anything that can harm themselves. There's a 2-acre pond that is completely blocked off from foliage and topography. They would have to really terrain to get to that, and the goal is not to have public near that at all. Just because.
Emily, did
The
you?
properties are predominantly wooded as it is.
Oh,
so
it's super wooded, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any other feedback, Emily, from earlier, everything? Hearing what we've heard now?
Yeah, I mean, sounds like, it would be a special event. Porta Johns or those trailers
Oh, yes.
would be
Mhm, mhm.
appropriate for that. Food vendors, that's part of your business, or you bring them?
They have own food trucks and things that are their own commercial kitchens, and that makes the most sense for us.
Okay.
It's not something I'm not a baker. I'm not.
Yeah, they would just have to reach out to the health department,
They already have their permitting because they do other
Okay.
Virginia festivals. We
Okay.
would not allow them to apply
Okay.
until they had that.
Yeah, I mean, until we see like specific, proposals, I think sounds good.
Okay, great.
Just a quick question.
Mhm.
Are you mentioned the food trucks. Are those going to be intermingled with the vendors, or are you going to have a site where you would have?
I would have a separate site for them because they have special requirements for power and propane, and they're loud, and it doesn't, aesthetically, it does not fit the happy little Christmas vibe always with these big loud food trucks. So at the end of the red line, there is a large open area, and that's where they could pull right in, park along a line, and that's where people would go get their snacks and food.
Okay, so you're essentially planning like a pavilion at the beginning of the trail. You said you were going to, large structure, roof structure. And at the end of the trail, you would have your food truck area.
They would be able to get to it from either
Either
side.
side,
Yes,
but
exactly.
basically, yeah. And then the vendors will be kind of spaced along the trail. And this area that you're going to be using, you're going to be pretty much fencing off with basically a sound deflecting privacy fence type of thing.
The privacy fence, sure, it will have some sound defecting qualities. There's also lots of foam talked about being utilized to bounce sound off and to dampen sound, things like that.
Okay, and the advantage of the trees around is that.
Oh,
also-
absolutely, absolutely. So it's large old growth, and then we've not clear cut, but just cleaned the underbrush, so you can walk through the forest. It's a pine grove. It's actually quite magical. Very, very Christmassy.
Alcohol served? Will you have alcohol vendors?
I have no interest in that. People have said you have to have alcohol if you have a venue event. I've looked into catering licenses or banquet licenses for it being 5 or so weeks and weekends only. And I called the ABC, Virginia ABC, and said, how would I handle this? They said, well, you can get the entire property just to have an alcohol permit, but if while you're waiting for that permitting, you can also in the meantime do a banquet and catering license for the event. So if we were to do that, I've done some research on how I would handle those.
I have a quick question for you, just so that way it doesn't look like we're glossing over anything. Can you address the need for the helipad on the site?
Okay, there's no need for a helipad except that I'm paranoid and I learned there was not one very close. So again, working with large events for the last 25 years, the more people you have, the more percentage of incident it is. It's just statistics. It has nothing to do with how cautious you are. Having a helipad, any helicopter pilot can land at about 30 feet, but 85 feet gives them, in any weather, in any condition, they are happy to land and they have no damage from the outside. That being said, that H would be an 85-foot clearing where, yes, we could congregate and people could be there, but in the case of emergency, you could also land an emergency helicopter and then take people immediately to medical care. With the roads that you would need for parking, just for practical sake, we would also be happy to use that for any of the other county needs because we are rural. And it's easier for them to take them here sometimes and then pick them up than somewhere else. So I think it would benefit overall. I don't have a helicopter personally, just very clear. I don't like helicopters. They make me sicker than a dog. But I do see their benefit in the emergency medical world.
Thank you.
Yeah, speaking of which, I'm glad you mentioned that. Have you had contact with the emergency medical services in the county, kind of giving them an idea of what you're doing, what they would like to see?
I haven't talked to our county. I was working with the other counties that already service festivals and say, how do you handle this? What percentage of your staff is taken up for this? Are they hired privately outside of the festival? And kind of seeing how other counties that deal with very large events do that. They hire a lot of people who are already EMS trained, whether from their county or else. And my plan is I know a lot of people from the Maryland, Baltimore area, DC metropolitan area, that are EMS professionals, and I would hire them to help work with these EMS professionals. Because when you're dealing with this many people and, working with a percentage of the county more, you have to account for that.
Yeah. I still think it's probably would be a good idea
Of course.
for you to sit down with them with this many potential customers at one time.
And we can,
Access.
yeah, because it's not just EMS, it's fire and.
Fire, EMS,
and
the whole, every
police.
service, absolutely.
And we can put you in contact with our emergency management coordinator. That's who's gonna run through.
Perfect.
And then, Mr. Nguyen, in terms of, would this large event require like sheriffs at the entrance for directional control? Is that a VDOT requirement, or would that be our sheriff's requirement? For entrance control on a large event, like you have it, like UVA, where the police are on the corners and things like that, or is this? Oh, that's what- okay.
If there's a special permit for it, but if she's gonna go to a commercial entrance with a
Then,
right turn lane or
Okay.
whatever necessary, that should mitigate any of that. If it's above and beyond, they think it's more than that, and the sheriff wants to take control of the traffic control, that's fine.
that's on the, okay, that's on the sheriff.
On the public safety side, we'll do an internal staffing, as we do with other projects, so. Yes, you'll have a seat at the table. We're not looking for you to go down and meet with the chief or this chief. We'll streamline that through Alan's office as we do any other project.
Okay, great, I appreciate that. I'm happy to go knock on doors and talk to everybody too, that's fine.
That's also a very good idea before you get too far into this, yeah.
The recommendation was come to this first, see how it's
Yeah.
received before stressing everybody out. Because my neighbors have told me about all the data centers we're building and not that Amazon's coming, and I'm like, guys, that's not true, but that's fine.
Gee, we need to know who your neighbors
A
are talking
different-
to.
I mean, it sounds like this one's gonna have a pretty thorough discussion,
Oh, yeah.
should it move forward. So I think you can just be prepared for a lot of questions in the planning commission if we get to that vote in a second. Any other questions today for this preliminary? Yeah, that's gonna be next. Nope, none from the panel. We'll open it up to public comment for this one. Do we have anyone online? Are you able to see?
We're not open to go to meeting, it would just be YouTube
Okay.
comments, we're not doing it on special.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Just to think about water source. Have you thought about that?
There's one well on the property, we've had it perked to see if other wells can be dug, they can, and we'll see if
Okay.
that's a need after the first year, but my thought is until we try to see if there's a need and interest.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Colt Purrier. I'm adjoining landowner to this property. Not sure if this is I guess this is a proposal, if this is a pre-application meeting as opposed to an application. I'm gravely concerned for where the idea is coming from and where it's going to. This proposal that's been filed, there's a whole lot of form to it, not a lot of substance to it, a lot of questions that are not answered, and a couple things that have been proffered here today in terms of 840 cars for an event on Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. Several references to this being a Christmas event when it starts 1st of December and goes through the end of January. Not consistent. References to a farmer's market when there's no vegetables or produce. Understand baked goods and meats, that kind of thing, but that doesn't seem to be consistent with the time of year. I would suggest to you that this is a purely commercial endeavor, and I need to double check the definition of agribusiness or agritourism but it doesn't seem to be agribusiness or agritourism or a holiday event, given the time frame. I don't know what, if any, farm activity is actually going on at this property currently. Everything around this property is exclusively residential and agricultural, and that's not consistent with what's been proposed. I'm trying to imagine what 840 cars on 722 and 634 looks like, and 840 cars on that driveway. And quite frankly, when you look at this map, I am tax map 42B, 42 and 43B, and those two. That next one, you got those two. I'm not waiting in line on Friday evening or Saturday evening or Sunday evening to get to my house. I don't know how Route 634 can possibly handle that kind of volume of traffic. Appreciate VDOT being here, and Mr. Wynn has made it clear that there's a lot of questions that are going to have to be asked, and the concept of widening the road and putting in a turn lane, there's a lot to that. There's a whole lot to widening this driveway that Ms. Wilshire has referred to. I calculate 840 automobiles parked to be approximately 3,400 people, and that's a lot. I'll double check, but it's my understanding that the speed limit on this part of 634 is not marked, and therefore it's 55. Mr. Wynn, you can correct me. There are several in the vicinity of Malvern and the developed area up back towards town on 634. But I'm pretty sure that this is a 55-mile-an-hour road. The issues with infrastructure are ones that the applicants would have to address in terms of the electric, the water and the sewer, and again, the traffic issue. Traffic issue is a huge issue from a safety standpoint, but there's a reference in this proposal to REC doing pulls through neighbors. And if you look at the GIS that's on the screen, everything along tax map parcels 44 and 45 is developed with Hunter's Ridge there. I can't even imagine the scale of a 14-foot tall fence that goes all the way around parcels 44 and 45 there. Understand and appreciate the county's interest in economic development, but I would suggest that it's really important that we balance any economic benefit to the county versus the adverse effect on everybody who's in that area. Again, the noise, the light, the traffic, and this is something that I think the county needs to consider very carefully. And I would suggest that as opposed to being referred to the Planning Commission from here, that there's more work, a lot more work that needs to be done to develop a plan in advance of that stage. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you. I think this is a comment section only from public, but
And that's fine. I'm just not going to say no if you ask me a question.
understand.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Any additional public comment? Seeing none. What interests the committee today on this particular case?
I guess before
Staff?
we go to a vote, I would just, well, I know Molly has a architect and engineer, so it's just, if it was me, I would highly recommend getting with VDOT in advance for design standards or any of that. John, is there a reference material or a guide or something found on VDOT's website that? Okay, that'd be great. I'm just thinking the timeline, if this were to advance to a planning workshop, there's a lot of review. And pending when this may hit, the General Assembly just handed us a wonderful amendment to subdivision and site plans and so forth, so. Okay, thank you. As long as there's a reference guide for, that would be helpful.
And Mr. Nichols, if I may ask, and sorry to put you on the spot, if moved today to go to planning commission, what would be the timeline when it's at public hearing?
So if the applicant can submit a completed application to me by the, I usually ask for the week prior. Let me pull up my calendar really quick, but it would be approximately the third week in June would be the first planning commission workshop. The third week in July would be the second planning commission workshop, which puts us the first week in August for a public hearing. I think that's roughly the timeline that I had proposed. If there are items that remain incomplete to get an application, then we're going to kick the can down the road a month, and that puts us a month behind. So I would say that if we are suggesting some level of preliminary engineering, that it would be in the applicant's best interest, to get those things put together before we go to planning commission so we can unpack them. But at the end of the day, if she provides to me the items that are on our application checklist, we're going to planning commission.
Just a quick question for the applicant. If, you've heard Alan's potential timeline. Do you have a kind of a cutoff date for when you would, if you start this and try to do this for the winter of '25, when you would like to be able to start that? Or do you not have time constraints that you need to deal with?
Our time constraints are very flexible, so I wouldn't call them restraints.
Okay. So that raises the question, do you think that you could have the things that we've been discussing ready for a June, third week in June meeting?
I do.
You do, okay.
That being said, I'll make the motion that we move Madison Hills to the planning commission. The preliminary work done and working with Alan as well.
Okay. The motion has been made and seconded to move, let me get to it officially. The case number TBD, Madison Hills Events, to the planning commission with preliminary items discussed today completed with Mr. Nichols in order to meet the timeframe for the June planning commission. Is that?
Sure.
Is that appropriate motion? This is a big one, so I want to make sure we get it right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go back to general public comment, non-case specific now, if anybody has that. Seeing none, are there any other items from the committee members or staff? All right. Does anyone want to make another motion?
Second.
Perfect. All right. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to our stakeholders, as always. Your break.